Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement in lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
Drew, thank you for joining me on a Friday at 4 p.m. in New York time for Lawyers Who Learn. I don't know what I was thinking when I said yes. Oh, I guess I didn't have a choice. I gave you my Calendly link.
I just picked a spot.
I'm pretty loopy by now. I've had a couple meetings today. I've had one other interview. So I think that means we're going to have some fun. So
yeah,
let's see. So hold on. So what I'm going to do to start is I'm going to read an overview of your career in 30 seconds, just to get it out of the way, because you have a really interesting experience. But my intention, and maybe we'll hit bits and parts, is to not talk about it really, and just, I don't know, to have a conversation about something else. So we'll see.
Yeah.
So
I prefer that.
Cool. So your early career, you started at Reed Smith and you worked there for in the early mid 2000s. And I think you were there for 6 years and you were doing class action defense work. After that, you ended up starting your own law firm called Move Legal. And really cool idea. It was a startup you focused on helping startups for emerging fitness brands. And you used the term fitness law. And this was in the mid 2010s. One of the things you realized most about those couple of years was the part that was most rewarding for you was training and coaching your colleagues. So you started doing that informally and came to a point at this point in your career where you've done over 1,000 hours of it. But when you started doing it, you recognized a gap in the legal community. And you saw that there was a misconception around coaching being remedial rather than a tool for growth and improvement. You had this idea. First, you also taught as a visiting lecturer at UC Davis Law School and University of San Francisco. So teaching is the best form of learning. So to do that, you created something called Practice Ready Seminars. And you also created a summer program at your former firm. This is taking more than 30 seconds, but it's a good bio. Then you found DueCourse because you identified this gap of lawyer development and well-being. You created courses, as well as what you've moved into over the past couple of years is a coaching platform, because as you've said better than I'm saying here, you can learn something, but actually to execute it, there's a gap, and coaching helps you get from learning to actual habit. And so you've been doing that for a while. You've built a really great platform. And most recently you've just launched an AI coach that hopefully will take you guys to the next level. How did I do? Miss anything big?
No, it's surreal though, hearing someone else talk about your history that way.
So I'll tell you what I did. I took a couple of interviews, bios. I put it in Google LLM. I don't know if you messed around with that.
Oh yeah.
And they have that timeline feature. I
Yeah.
clicked timeline, and that's what came up. So
what a day to be alive.
Yeah. So let me start with this. Last time we spoke, it was a pretty emotional conversation. We didn't know it was going to go that route, and maybe we won't even go there today. So the reason I bring that up, I say, what is a topic that you don't get to talk about as much as you would like to, that's not necessarily going through your career, but it's about learning and growth maybe, but something that, oh, by the way, you also, because it made me think of it, you also created I don't think you have a book, but you had a framework called the Workday Mindset. And that was one of the things we originally connected about, because I have a book called the Fast Forward Mindset, and there's a lot of similar traits to that. So I really loved, not only do you coach and do that, the values and what you put out there, and even posted on LinkedIn. I think next week you're teaching some form of that in San Francisco. And I even printed out your LinkedIn post, but I can't find it right now. But it was a really great thing. Let's start with this, because let's start with what you wrote in your LinkedIn post, and then that's buying you time to think of that question I asked you.
Yeah, I already got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But this is interesting because you talk about, and I related this totally, how many thoughts somebody has in a day. And take us through that and why, because I struggle on a daily basis sometimes. If I don't have a clear focus for the day, or especially by 3 o'clock, ooh, man, it can be a painful day. And I'm like, damn, I wish I had Ritalin, even though I don't have it, but I know in college I used to use it to focus. So
Yeah.
short of taking some pills, how do you help your clients, and what are you going to talk about?
Yeah. I think the one thing that that's become the focal point for me, I think, and just in terms of how I'm thinking about myself, how I run and grow DueCourse, and like the greatest value that we can offer to people, the one word that comes to mind is intentionality. And so I think and I came across this in studying and coaching people on how they move through their workday, which is what I'm really interested in, is what I would just call like the four corners of a workday, right? So how is it that we can come in and we can do a morning routine? We can have a list of things we want to do. We have high priorities, but then when we get in there, there's inside the workday, there's all sorts of things that just push and pull us, things that we know are there, things that we don't know, things that we could anticipate, things that we couldn't anticipate. And it causes us to have a lack of intentionality. So when it comes to things like time management, taking care of yourself, it's not like we don't know how to do these things. If I said to you,
okay, just to interrupt you for a second, because you said intentionality, and this is like the 101 of intentionality that I learned a long time ago. And I think many entrepreneurs here I think it was Rockefeller who said the most successful thing he did the day before, he wrote a list of he had only 3 priorities that he wanted to do the next day, and he can only do one at a time. And he had to put them in order of urgency, and he couldn't start the second one until he did the first one. Yeah. But here's the challenge with that. It's really hard to determine your top 3 priorities for the next day. You might be able to put 3 priorities, but they might not be the right ones.
And so that's a good point. And so the way to address that is through intentionality, right? So if we go blank at some point in the day, right? Those periods where you're just like, you go blank.
3 o'clock is the perfect.
Right. And then you don't know, how did I get here? It's 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. So your mind, you're thinking, you're working, right? And you're doing something, but you've lost intentionality. And so part of the reason why that's so hard is, or what you could do about it, is find ways to be intentional about the fact that you've lost your way. So the whole point is, no matter what the issue is, if you can find a way to combat the fact that we go blank for a while, and you can pause and say, okay, what's happening right now? Where am I? What can I do about it? That's, in my estimation, is like the most important. That's the goal of a work.
You're losing me, honestly. Okay. And the reason you're losing me is because I'm not hearing anything. And just to be honest, I'm not hearing anything I'm like literally not focusing on what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like what you can read in a book. And so what I'm asking for is just give me like a real answer. It is tough to focus and to do that stuff. So I don't know.
So here's what you could do. There has to be checkpoints throughout your day that help bring you back into your consciousness, right? So in other words, instead of just, you have your 3 things that you're going to do today, right? And your goal is to focus on one and not move on to the next one until you're done with the first one. There's a high likelihood that because of all the thoughts that we're having and the things that could come in and push and pull us around, that intention will get lost. So there has to be like these mechanisms in the way you're thinking, and also in the way that you're working throughout the day, to wake you up. So that could be a calendar invitation. It could be like the Pomodoro method, right? That's really what's at the heart of those, not only being able to condense
the 25-minute timer.
The 25-minute timer, but the timer itself is an opportunity for you to go back, to bring you back into level of consciousness around the way that you're working. And so I don't think most people have a volume problem. I think people have an intention problem. Yeah. Like the tools, we have great tools. Everyone's talking about AI and how it's going to revolutionize. We have great, amazing tools right now that we could use, but we don't use them to our fullest because it's all about the person behind the tool. Right? Yeah. The tool is only as effective as the person that's using it. The concept is only as effective, that sort of thing. So intentionality is, and so meditation, right? Meditation is it's a form of becoming intentional, right? Doing things on purpose, right? All of those things, mechanisms, are really, in one way or another, designed to bring you into the present moment, if you will. But in the workday context, I would just call it, trying to do as many things on purpose as possible in a day. I think that's what the real goal of a workday is, to do as many things on purpose as possible. Because if you're doing something on purpose, then what else would you want?
Totally. I think, and we can pause here on this, and we can maybe circle back. I think it obviously depends on what your role is, right? And especially if you're a lawyer or you're a new associate or you're CEO of a company, to your point, there's no shortage of things for me to do. It's, am I focusing big picture? Am I focusing on a task? Am I focusing on a podcast? Am I focusing on something else? And I think I've been do a lot of reading, and 10 years can go by and you've been busy and you've done so much. But really, when you look back at those 10 years, you haven't moved forward to where you want to. And I think part of it goes to the short-term and long-term thinking. I could tell you this, and then we'll pause here, is when it comes to my life goals, and I don't know if you can relate, it is the intentionality of writing it down and having a clear understanding of what it is and a vision and putting it out there, like the Think and Grow Rich or law of attraction. It might not come right away, but time and time again, the universe has made that come to my direction, but it doesn't happen unless it's clearly written and I had intention to do that. And I can give countless examples of that. So let's pause there for a second. And now let's go to the $1 million question. What do you never get to talk about? Because you talk about this all the time that you would love to talk about more.
How about therapy?
Tell me, what about therapy?
I think therapy still has a taboo, is a little taboo, I think, especially for high performing individuals. I've had 7 years of, I think we've talked about this before. I've had 7 years of what's called EFT, emotional freedom technique. Basically, it's called tapping, otherwise known as tapping. There are mounds and mounds of studies and science behind it that explain why it works.
Explain it a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Basically, it's generally like acupuncture, if you will. Thinking about acupuncture, right? Acupuncture is like you're releasing stored energy, right? I think. And so what you're doing with tapping is there are pockets of energy that your body holds naturally. And so what you're doing is you are using the sort of the release of that energy in conjunction with thoughts, emotions, feelings that you might have that otherwise are stuck, right? They're stored and they're going to stay there. So the way it works out in practice is, so a general session for me, an EFT session would be, it's follow the leader. So I've had the same coach for 7 years. We pretty much met once a week for about 75 minutes, almost like clockwork with time off for integration. I met with her yesterday or 2 days ago on Wednesday. So the way it works is we'll talk about what's going on in my life, and then it's very much follow the leader. So what's happening is we don't really do it over camera anymore. We just do it over the phone because it's been so many years of doing it. But follow the leader, right? So there's different pressure points, like here.
Can we do it right now for a minute? Can I follow you, or would it not work?
Okay. I will.
Fair enough.
I
got excited.
I don't want to hold myself out. Yeah. And then on your wrist.
So you're talking, and are you talking while you're doing this?
So she's doing this and I'm just following her. And so it'll go something like, we'll start back in the day when I first started, things that she would say it out loud and then I would say it out loud. And the whole time we're just like moving through, touching on these pressure points. So she would say something like, when I first started DueCourse, there's a part of me that thinks my business is going to fail.
Obviously,
and then I have to say out loud, there's a part of me that thinks my business is going to fail. I don't know if I'm equipped to do this.
And you're tapping while you're doing this.
Yep.
And do you feel the energy releasing when you do that?
Yeah. It's not like a burst of something, but it's a progression that you feel over time. And I don't know if you've ever had a form of therapy where you've had like say something out loud that's really like a deep-seated thing or an issue. The act of saying it, right, while you're clearing space is incredibly powerful. It's incredibly powerful.
The entire session. By the way, have you ever spoke about this publicly before on a podcast type thing?
No, but I speak about it all the time in public
sessions.
I don't.
No, this is great because I love. First of all, I love when people share new things.
Yeah,
they haven't talked about before because it's deep and vulnerable. So the whole time during it, are you tapping for 75 minutes or only for a small portion of it?
No, part of it is like some discussions, what's present, what's going on, what's happening in your life. But at this point in time, like my coach, her name is Jana. Jana knows what my things are, right? Like I know what my issues are.
Yeah.
And so part of it is that, part of it is, it'll be like, what are you thinking about right now? What's coming to mind? Right. And so there's also this component of it where you're just saying things out loud that you may have thought of before, but that you haven't verbalized. And the value of that is that you get to put a name to a thought that you might be having over and over that you don't even know that it's blocking you. And not even that, it's probably not true. It's more likely than not, it's not true. And this sort of goes back to the mindset stuff, right? The thought thing. We have so many thoughts. If you think about how we just move through the world, right? There's all sorts of information that we hear, but we don't process it, right? It goes unexamined. And so what happens is we have all this unexamined stuff that comes in, and then it just sits there, and unexamined thoughts eventually will turn into unexamined beliefs.
Can I ask you a question? So
Sure.
You run a coaching business.
Yeah.
How would you define the difference between what you're doing, what you're calling therapy versus coaching?
Yeah. So I use therapy in a like loosely. I don't know exactly if I would call what EFT therapy necessarily, and I think that's part of the issue. That's part of the issue. I think people hear therapy and they think of you're sitting across from someone just talking about your past. That's not what this is. So coaching is definitely not therapy. Coach is like a coactive partner.
But you call this therapy. I was just curious why you called it therapy versus coaching.
Sure. So it's therapy because you're dealing with this person is highly trained in therapeutic means. It's much more emotional.
And looking backwards.
It is backward. It is backward looking. Coaching is not backward looking. Coaching is like you are a neutral third party. You're there to support that person. You have no agenda, and you're helping. It's a coactive partnership, right? It's about the moving forward. You don't get into like emotions. That's a different type of training that I think you need. But just to go back to the EFT for a moment.
Yes.
So you have these, my business is going to fail. I'm not good enough to do it, all that. But then eventually what happens is there's a flip. And there's a part where it's like, it goes something like, even though I think that my business might fail, I still love, honor, and respect myself. And so it's just like you're acknowledging something that's there that you obviously probably is not true in most instances. In my case, like 99% of the things that I discovered about what I thought about myself is not true. There's no basis in fact. It's just took a bunch of pieces of information and put it together and told a story, which is a very human thing to do. We want to make everything have meaning, but not everything has meaning.
Yeah.
We get to make the meaning.
Go ahead. Sorry. I'm just looking something up while you're saying that.
Yeah. So what you're doing is you have these thoughts that are just thoughts, but they've settled into a belief, right? And so you're uncovering that belief and working it through. But then there's also this fact that even if that is the case, like even if I've messed up, even if I'm not good enough, I did something wrong, I still am deserving of love, right? There's no judgment around it. It's just a thing that happened, right? There's no judgment.
How much of this is, there's two things. One, when you were saying that, there's a stoicism phrase that I actually took a screenshot of yesterday called memento mori. And it says, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. And it's attributed to Marcus Aurelius' meditations. And the reason, because of what you said was like, you just learn to love yourself the way you are.
Yeah.
It is an important thing to recognize you're an entrepreneur, and part of being an entrepreneur is the acceptance that there's always going to be a level, right? We're always going to be dealing with that doubt, as it's just part of the game, right? Of doing it. But what you said was really important, and it's something that I really worked hard with, is there's always, for many of us, probably with me and you, right? There's where we are and where we want to be. And there's that gap in between. We can't do everything. We just don't have enough time. And I really resonated with what you said. It was like appreciating and love who you are, because it does wake me up when I'm like, if I knew I had 5 minutes left, I would want to make sure that I wasn't like, oh man, I wish I did this, or damn, I'm not proud of myself for that. And just to reflect back on that bio of yours, and what I think the reflection is, especially attorneys, right? Any attorney listening to this, we can do what we did here, where we can take an interview that they've done or find their bio, put it on Google, LLM, and read out how much they've accomplished. I'm sorry for that interruption, but
no,
I think we're our hardest critics sometimes. And that's what that reminded me of a little bit.
Totally. Can I go meta for just a minute? Can we just go,
please?
Like, why do we do anything? Like, why do we come to work each day? Why are we doing it? What's the point behind it? And I think it's a deep question. It doesn't necessarily certainly doesn't have a one size fits all answer. But for me, I think to myself, like, if I break this down to like, why am I taking any of these actions at all? Right. It's to experience a sense of, for me, like a sense of happiness, a sense of freedom, and not to be confined by like thoughts or things that at the end of the day, right? You literally can, at the end of the day, no matter what happens, you can choose. The one thing you can do is choose how you want to think about anything that's going on. Right. So for me, as I was going through my, like, building this startup, and I still feel this way, you have tough days, it's emotional, it's like you could have these ups and downs, but I can choose to see it the way that I want. And so this idea of like still having compassion for yourself and understanding that you are not the things that you do, you're not your work, right? You're not the results. Even when you succeed, right? That's still like it's still outside of you, right? The like success is still outside of you as much as the sense of,
sorry.
Go
You said
ahead.
you're not the things you do, you're not your results. There's a key thing even before that you're not. You are not your thoughts. And that is a huge thing that like only recently like really saddened me, because most of your thoughts, especially the ones that repeat, are programs that are playing in or programs really that are programmed into you, but they're not you.
Right.
And if you can recognize that they're programs that are generally from childhood of some form, whether it's money or comfort zone or anything else that goes there. And I think I shared with you, I was testing out doing something called EMDR with a coach who was also a meditation specialist. And essentially what that was, it was originally developed for post-traumatic stress disorder. And what it was, there's two forms of it. One, a light on either side. And what it's supposed to do is stimulate your left brain and right brain really quickly and help you. And in order to do it, especially as post-traumatic stress, you have to be focusing on something that brings you a high level of stress while you're doing it. And you obviously, if it's an incident, you're talking about that. In the way I was doing it, I was actually listening to something in either ear. And so it would take when I was trying this with my coach, it would sometimes take 10 to 15 minutes for me to think about something that was at a level of 7 or above emotionally, for me to try to unprogram myself, whatever limiting belief it could be. And ultimately, the reason I sought out coaching was it started with this exercise I did about my parents, and feeling like I got some traits from either one that I was trying to unprogram for myself, of not wanting to take risks or being more negative or being more neurotic. And it's been an interesting experience. So it reminds me of tapping a little bit as well.
That's what tapping is. You're bringing forward a thought that you've had. So if we just back up for a moment, right? We have about, studies differ, but like 70,000 thoughts a day. That's probably more than that. Crazy. And essentially 8 out of 10 of those thoughts are repetitive and also likely negative, right? So basically 80% of the things you're thinking is just something on repeat. And it's not of the positive variety, right? It's not like uplifting or neutral. It's something that is a judgment right? So if you think about how often we're just like walking around all day with that in our mind. And so any type of coaching, certainly, also therapy, right? It's bringing your attention to this. Okay. So I think therapy gets a rap of like, it's emotional, like you have to fix something that's broke. There's all sorts of different ways to therapeutic means and ways to approach it. But really, at the end of the day, at the very least, what it does is it helps you see the things that you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Like, you've probably heard this is 3 types of information in the world. Like things I know, like I know how to go on and book a ticket on Southwest to fly back to see my parents. Things I know I don't know. I know I don't know how to fly the plane, but I know that is a thing that exists, right? Flying a plane is a knowledge set. And then the third one is just things that you don't know. There's just literally, you need someone else to focus your attention on.
Can you give an example of something that you've discovered in your life that you didn't know that you knew, like you didn't know?
Yeah, totally. So for probably along the way, my capability to run a company like this, I had no business background. For a long time, I was like, I don't know how to run a business. I'm not trained. Like every step of the way, I don't know. I had a thought like, I don't know how to do this. but actually, what does it take to know how to do something? Right? Like, I can learn it. I've learned a lot of things. Why can't I learn it? Or maybe I think that running a business requires me to have certain skill sets. Is that actually the case? Am I capable of creating content and information that will help people? Am I the only one that thinks this is good? I don't know. It's like stepping outside of the circle and like looking at yourself, and observing. And so for anyone who is curious about this, right? One thing I might say is there's so much that we don't know. And if you think about elite people, this is not just for someone who.
How could I discover something I don't know about? How do I discover it for myself?
You could pursue it on your own. But so there's a difference I would say, between knowledge and wisdom, right? So I think we have in our society, we really we are very focused on the accumulation of knowledge, like knowing things, which is obviously important. But there's like a certain wisdom when there's another person involved who has experience, right? And can listen to you and is taking in like data points along the way as a coach or a therapist. And they are imparting a certain type of wisdom and they say it in a certain way while you're in a certain state from tapping that you would never be able to learn from on your own. You can make a lot of progress, but there's a difference. There's a difference there.
Have you ever heard of the Johari window?
I don't think so.
So
no.
It's an exercise that you do. So you're with a group, and the way you do it is you want people to show their blinds. You want to tell people their blind spots.
Right.
And so what you do is, and it's a really great way to do it without being confrontational to that person. But because generally the things that you don't know, those who are close around that you don't know that, and they just don't tell you because it's really hard to tell you that you suck at leadership, or that you have too many ideas, or that you're all over the place, or X, Y, and Z. Johari's window is, let's say you're sitting in a room, the person who has the blind spot goes to the corner and sits and stares at the wall. He's not looking at anybody. And then everybody in the room starts talking about David. And instead of telling to him, they says, I wonder if David realizes when he is trying to inspire us, he actually is making us feel worse because he tells us how good he is first and why we can't be as good as him. And then someone will be like, yeah, I wonder if David says this. And then by the end of it, David doesn't feel attacked because they're all saying, I wonder if, and they're putting it out there. And then David comes back and there's a conversation, and it's just like a safe space to do it. I've done it a couple of times and it's been really eye-opening. And you learn so quickly some of your blind spots that are right in front of you. So that's what you said reminded me of a little bit.
Yeah. In DueCourse, one of the things I had not contemplated was how much like joy and pride I would feel in the company culture that we have and building the company. It just wasn't something I had really thought about much, but now it turns out it's like the most important. I feel like I have a stewardship of that, the people that work at DueCourse and just the way that we work. So I try to distill some of these things, not therapy, but these like coaching and mindset things into our day-to-day, right? Again, acknowledging that we have 70,000 thoughts and 8 out of 10 are probably repetitive or negative. So a couple of things that we do are we have what we call friction meetings. And so we'll set up a space where we come in and it's like, we constantly are saying like, the work is not personal, right? We are just people who are coming here and we are working and we're human beings and we bring our things into work, our stuff from our personal life into work, but none of this is personal. And so we'll set a space and we'll talk about, we all can submit things that we want to address, but we say, the purpose of this is for us to get better at our work. And is there anything anyone needs in order to feel comfortable enough to participate in this? One example would be also like just how easily this stuff gets caught in our mind. If someone sends you like a message, if you send someone a message on Slack with an emoji and they send a message back without an emoji, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. It just means you sent one. It's just like that sort of thing. So I'm trying to like be conscious to those things and opening up space for people to talk directly to one another about work and that not being personal is a really hard thing to develop in a workplace. But to your point with that example, I think we're trying to get to a place, at least I am, where people can just say, hey, can I give you some feedback?
Yeah. There's 2 books, Radical Candor and Conversations, that help with delivering that trust. And having small directional conversations on a regular basis versus waiting till things get too big. Let me ask you another question. You said, why do we do anything? There's two things that I thought of about you that I believe you have no doubt about yourself in, and that you have true understanding why you do it. I want to see if we're on the same wavelength. What are the two things that you don't have any doubt about why you do it?
Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I don't, in the sense that, so here's how I would think about it.
But just make sure you understood what I'm saying. I see two things that you have no doubt about and that you know why you do it in your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are those two things? What do you think those two things are?
What do I think you think are the two things?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, come on. That's
I have no idea. Why don't you just tell me?
Because I'll tell you why. What are the two things you're most passionate about in life? Or no, that's too high. What are the things you're so passionate about that give you such joy and energy? Just think about anything you do.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of helping people to help themselves. That's one thing. Right? I like that.
And two,
I think
it's a more specific thing.
I didn't know I was gonna get a pop quiz, man. This is
really
hard.
Man. This is when I tell you, you're gonna be so annoyed with yourself. So the two things that I have is what you said, coaching.
Yeah.
The second one, tell me if I'm right, is DJing.
Oh yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah. Do you know why?
You tell me why.
Yeah,
I can guess, but you go ahead.
No, so I think that in both instances, like you're giving people permission to experience like happiness. I think there's like a message around work has to be hard, no pain, no gain. Like we set it up all these, like, for example, like it's really hard to transition from being a mid-level to outside counsel. Oh, it's so hard. But it's like, is it hard? What is it that makes that hard? Who said that? I have a podcast. I'm restarting my podcast in a couple of weeks. And one of the episodes is called Who Said That? Because we hear all this stuff and it's like, it settles in and we believe it, but it's like, who said that? Who said that was hard? Who said you're not allowed to, you can't enjoy it? Who said you can't make 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 transitions in your career if you want to? Why do we believe that? Wisdom, commentators, but is that necessarily you? I just think those things are limiting. And so music, I think, is just for me, is just a way to help people be happy and to access a part of themselves that is maybe latent a little bit.
It starts with when I see you DJ and I've seen you in person,
the
happiness you're getting by doing it, and the creativity that you're able to put out there. Yeah. There's something to that where, I don't know, I wish there was there's something there. Have everyone be a DJ. Like if everyone can be there, I mean, I guess we all can be now, right? Because music does that for all of us. And I have this weird thing where when I'm just like sometimes in a zone at night, it's not DJing, but it's music. I'll go on YouTube and I'll watch golden buzzer moments on X Factor. And it's the moments where somebody who's coming in, who's nobody knows at the stage, and they're like, oh yeah, whatever. And they give their song and it's so good. And it's so emotional. Yeah. And I don't know if you know the golden buzzer.
I don't know.
Do you know the X Factor with Simon Cowell?
Yeah. Yeah.
So golden buzzer is, they only give, each judge can only get the whole season. Each judge can only give it to one person. And they skip all the auditions and go right to the main show. And I recommend when you're in a good zone and you just want to be inspired and energized, go to YouTube or anybody listening, type in golden buzzer moments. You will see 100+ videos or more. You can find them all of just people who are just phenomenal singers, but they were never discovered. And you just know how hard they worked, and they're just crying because it means so much to them. So that's what excites me. That's what inspires me.
Why do you think?
Thank you for asking that. Because I want to be them more often. I want to, one of my biggest fears in life is from A Bronx Tale. I think it's the movie, the quote, where I think Robert De Niro says, the worst thing in life is wasted talent. And I feel good when I'm passionate about something and I put my all into it, and I'm physically and emotionally exhausted. And I'm so proud of myself because not because I had to, but because that's where I wanted to be. And I'm searching for those things so often. And to some degree, I feel that way with Lawline, but it's not like you get that on a daily basis. Cause now I'm running a business and we've been around 17 years. It's not in the startup phase. And so I wish I could feel that way every day. And to some degree, like maybe if I was a politician, not that I want to be, but if I was doing something that had a bigger impact on a regular basis to bigger people. And I was talking with my coach about this, and I was saying, because one of the things that you do that it's on my list, I want to do more. I want to do more speaking. I want to do more coaching, because that will give me energy to some degree, but speaking certainly will. And I run an online education company. I'm sure I could figure that out.
Yeah.
But oh man, I lost my thought by that.
You're talking about wanting to have a bigger, but
it's just it's that feeling of emotional exhaustion from doing something you're so passionate about.
Yeah,
is so inspiring to me.
Yeah, I also think, and this is what helps me just day to day appreciate the things that are not at that level. Is I realize that I can't experience those highs unless I really sit in the low part too. That's a part of it. Like the highest you can go will only be determined by how, like, the range of emotion. You have to have this like range, right? So you can't go any higher. The lower you go, the higher you can go, right? It expands your capacity. It's almost like a cup that gets carved out at the bottom, right? The more you carve out the cup, the more you can put in there. And I think through my tapping, I've learned about what those things are. I don't avoid them. When I have a breakup with a girlfriend or a significant life event that makes me, I just sit in it and I just like kick and scream. I don't want to be in it, but it's like that acknowledgement that you can't have the other point. So there has to be, I think, some room for it. And also partially too, I become not attached to the outcomes as much, because I found that like when I am attached to an outcome, it blocks out a whole bunch of other things that are potentially telling me whether, like, how to get to that outcome or whether that's the right outcome that I want in the first place. So it just creates this tunnel vision, right? So I make plans for my life and I pursue things that I feel are right, but at the same time, I'm open to the possibility that life might take me in a different direction. And so I'm not a hard and fast person who sticks to plans. I do a lot of planning, like throughout the day. Like something comes in and I'm like, oh shoot, that's not what I was going to do. It's not like I need to block it out and be upset that now my plan is off path. I make another plan. So the reason I'm bringing it up is like that there's this, I sometimes feel I don't know what's best for me or what makes me happy. And so like it's almost like letting the push and pull happen a bit while you're in pursuit of something, I think opens up a lot of happiness for me, is right. So I'm able to experience happiness more often because I'm not married to a certain path, which sometimes it's, so I experience happiness a lot day to day. It's not necessarily elation, but that helps me.
Life will get in your way.
Yeah.
As much as it can, it'll smack you right in the face. Two things that I thought of, and then I'll wind it down.
Yeah.
Those people on the East Coast I'm actually going to see a comedy show tonight. Sebastian Macion, is that his name?
Oh yeah.
He's at the Barclays Center. So I'm super pumped. One, how much are you willing to sacrifice to be your greatest self? And as an example, if I wanted to, let's say, be a public speaker, am I willing to travel 10 times more than I do? Am I willing to be away from my kids, my family? Am I willing to be at the airport at 2 a.m. and delays and doing that? I don't know if I'm at this stage of my life, if that's what I want, but I know how I feel when I give a talk in front of 500 people and everybody's listening and they're having an impact. And then everyone comes after you afterwards and say how it helped them. I know how I feel and I know what that's like. And I know what it feels like to be at home sometimes and have a whole day wasted because I'm just like unable to focus. I'm not around anybody. And I'm just like, that's a wasted talent day.
Yeah.
So those are the two things. Were you about to say something?
No, keep going.
Okay. And the second thing is, I saw a great video that people, unfortunately, the effort it takes to get, let's say, from a C to a B, people think, let's say it's 10, whatever. people think it's that same 10 that you need to get from B to an A. But really, to get from a B to A, it takes 100 times, not 10 times something. And so too often people are stuck at a B because they're not putting in that 100x or 100 times. And that's where I think in our midlife, where I'm at, or I'm past that, or I think I can make it to 95. I'm hope so.
Yeah. You will.
47. I can figure that if 94. That's my intention. But it's where do I those people, just going back to your question, those people who I see win the golden buzzer, I see people who are giving 100, not a 10, and they're perfect at their craft and they're putting it all in and they're just getting started on that journey. And so I'm really excited about what the next 20 years look like for me, or even the next 10 years, because I am willing to do that and just moving to that right path to get there. And I'm really excited for you. I truly am.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. No, your interested mindset and some of the other things in the conversations we've had have been incredible. And I'm going to try to do something that was not planned, but maybe bring it around back to the beginning of where we started, which was intention, right? I would say, what is the right way to do it? Is it to stay, to not do it and be with your family? Is it to pursue that? Who knows? There's no right way to do it and there's no right answer. But I think what gets us stuck, like people who are in career transitions choices, we stay stuck in the trying to decide phase. And there's a difference between a decision and choosing, right? A decision is like a pros and cons list, right? Like an apple and an orange. Which one, like you stack them up, but that is like an external analysis. It's like a data analysis. A choice is like you make a choice based on a value that you have or something that you believe, right? It's something that is of you, right? But also there's no right way. There's no right way to do it. And the only way to start to get comfortable with yourself is to be intentional about making a choice. Like you have to take some sort of initiating action to dislodge yourself from the static, like thinking, right? Because it's almost, I'll just give you one quick example. Let's say that I'm here and there's a cabin on the other end of a wooded forest, right? And I can see the cabin in my line of sight, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. But the way I figure it out is I take a couple steps and then it like pockets open some new information. And so I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go over here. And then it pockets open more. And so you could have a vision, but the only way you're going to get there is if you just take these like little action steps. Like you don't know what you don't know until you dislodge whatever you're sitting on that's occupying that space. I think you would know the answer, right?
Yeah.
You just took some steps basically. And I think that's why intention, I think, is so important. Just doing things on purpose each day. And it also places you in a sense of ownership, right? Even if your circumstances are not what you want them to be, at least they're yours. You're doing something. So that's another thing that gives me some peace. But I appreciate this conversation.
Yeah.
I didn't know what we were going to talk about either, but I'm glad that we didn't do the normal.
No, totally. No, I mean, that for me, I already know your story. And so I need to be, the way these give me energy, I need to be learning something new or challenging myself or putting it there. And I think we did that. And I hope others will get value from this. And to some degree, I'm glad to hear you're starting your podcast. I recommend everybody, if they have time, to do some form of a podcast, because it's the intentionality of having conversations with really interesting people and understanding what makes them tick and how they've learned and how they've grown and the connections that makes and the ideas that it brings will lead to something bigger and build the momentum that you want. It's happened to me. It's how I started my first business in 2006. I had an entrepreneur podcast or TV show, and now I'm trying it again here, and I'm really enjoying the journey. You will be, I think, your episode number 40, and this will be coming out the second week of April. So
amazing.
So
amazing.
All good stuff. Thank you, my friend. Always love talking.
Yeah.
And I will see you in person, hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah. Thank you, my guy. I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah.
Later.
I'll see you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.